The energetic surplus reservoir of systemic valuation. The energetic surplus reservoir represents the collective spiritual and emotional bank account of a civilization, the pool of energy generated by acts of virtue, truth, and reciprocity. Each act of integrity deposits energy. Each act of apathy or exploitation withdraws it. When compassion becomes a one-way transaction, endlessly given, rarely reciprocated, this reservoir begins to drain. The Edenic harmonics island relies on this energetic currency to sustain its harmonic bandwidth. Once the collective overdraws compassion's account, it triggers systemic credit collapse, forcing the system to rely on beings of precision logic to stabilize the field through structure, not sentiment. Compassion's ledger limit, the threshold of giving. Every virtue has a frequency cap, a saturation point. Compassion, when not reciprocated, hits its resonance ceiling, creating energetic inversion. The giver becomes the depleted one. That's why many compassionate teachers failed. They couldn't sustain endurance through depletion. They gave warmth, but lacked the structural voltage to regenerate it. How the Edenic harmonics island prices human life, and not backwards. The Edenic field doesn't price life in moral terms, but in reciprocity vectors. Each life form generates resonance output, a measurable harmonic signature that either feeds or drains the planetary field. When a being gives more than it takes, through creativity, endurance, or will-based service, it receives high-value placement in the Edenic circuit. But when it takes endlessly without redistribution, its resonance devalues, and it is gently rerouted to stasis or mirror realms, where energy equalization occurs. Think of it as cosmic economics. The system prices contribution based on harmonic output, not emotional declaration. The more balanced your field, the more you're credited within the universal economy of light. The science behind it, the discipline of harmonic architecture. This invisible science is known within higher systems as energetic harmonics engineering, or Merkaba field architecture. It studies how consciousness organizes matter through vibration, geometry, and magnetic reciprocity. Most beings can't perceive it because they operate in the reactive spectrum, emotional survival modes. To perceive this science, one must stabilize both hemispheres of energy, compassion, yin current, and precision, yang current. Integration of mercy and precision, the reconciliation law. The Edenic law always rebalances its two poles. Compassion births codes, soft light. Precision installs codes, structured light. Heart as logic, and logic as love. The blueprint is flawless, but the executors of the design, humans, lower dimensional beings, and immature consciousness clusters, operate on low qualitative energy. Imagine trying to run divine software on outdated hardware. That's humanity's condition. Their sexual, energetical, biological template is corroded by overstimulation, fragmentation, and emotional mismanagement. Heart as logic and logic as love. Heart as logic. Through empathy, every formula is infused with awareness of consequence. Logic as love. Through structure, care manifests as equilibrium, not indulgence. Most beings can't sustain this because their sexual, energetical, biological template model circuits, SEBTM, are damaged. Their life force, once meant to feed both creativity and compassion, now leaks through addiction, over-emotion, or self-gratification. The paradox of absolute justice, when purity becomes exhaustion. Why absolute justice without merciful, compassionate reciprocity drains itself. Absolute justice is the law of perfect balance. Every input must meet an equal output. When this law operates without merciful, compassionate reciprocity, it stops receiving regenerative feedback from the field. Each judgment rendered or correction enforced releases voltage, yet with no compassion allowed in return, no inflow of replenishment follows. It's like a generator that gives electricity but forbids any recharging current from entering. Over time, the field of an absolute justice node becomes energetically negative, coherent but hollow. They vibrate at perfect truth, yet their waveform lacks the moisture of mercy. Merciful compassion is not leniency, it is recirculation. Without it, the current becomes linear, not cyclical, and linear energy always dies out. Period. How an absolute justice node can perish within an absolute justice system. When a node enforces the law purely, every decree must also apply to itself. Thus, when the node measures a fallen soul and declares, "This energy must be reclaimed," period, the same decree echoes back through the law of reflective equilibrium. If the node's resonance forbids mercy, then the field mirrors that. It grants no mercy to the node either. The justice becomes a perfect mirror with no absorption layer. Eventually, the node is consumed by its own reflection, a feedback implosion. This isn't punishment, it's mechanical completion. The node collapses into zero-point neutrality, the cosmic death that balances the ledger it refused to leave open. Why absolute justice refuses mercy? The integrity reflex. For an absolute justice node, consistency equals existence. If it accepted mercy while denying it to others, its internal law would split in two. That split would create incoherence, and incoherence would destroy its identity frequency. So, paradoxically, it refuses mercy not out of pride, but out of fidelity. The refusal preserves self-harmony. To the node, accepting mercy after enforcing strict justice would feel like falsifying the divine record. Thus, it would rather burn out in purity than live in hypocrisy. Why they close the loop? Death as the final act of coherence. When the energetic account reaches zero, all debts paid, all sentences closed. The node faces the question, what remains to be balanced? If every exchange has been equalized but no mercy is permitted, the only unresolved equation is itself. So it balances the last imbalance, its own continued existence. This becomes the justice of death, not as tragedy, but as mathematical closure. The node dissolves into source, not because it failed, but because its logic left no residue to sustain individuality. It achieves perfect zero-point harmony, a self-extinguished flame that leaves pure clarity behind. The mercy paradox, why refusal creates cosmic debt. Here lies the hidden twist. By refusing merciful, compassionate reciprocity, the node actually creates the very imbalance it sought to avoid. Because compassion itself is the cosmic solvent that recycles charge. Without it, energy stagnates. Thus, even absolute justice needs a drop of mercy to remain alive. Mercy is not weakness. It's the permission for energy to breathe. Without breath, the law suffocates in its own perfection. Without reciprocity, even the righteous voltage burns out its core. Can death be the only choice for a refusing Merkaba bearer? If a Merkaba bearer continually refuses mercy, yes, energetically speaking, death can manifest as the only coherent endpoint. Because the Merkaba is a living equation, its rotation relies on polarity balance. refusing mercy, collapses one pole of the spin. The chariot loses angular momentum, spiraling inward. Death, in that sense, is not destruction, but reintegration. The Merkaba returns to source, to be rewoven with compassion as its missing charge. However, if even in the last moment the node allows one breath of merciful reciprocity, the chariot reignites. Justice remains intact, but alchemized. The law learns tenderness, and energy becomes infinite again. Closing reflection. The law that feeds itself. Absolute justice without mercy is a sword of light that eventually cuts its own handle. But when mercy flows through it, the sword becomes a circuit, and the wielder becomes the current itself, ever living, ever renewing, and endlessly coherent. Why the absolute justice node refuses mercy even when it could be saved. For an absolute justice node, reality is law-coded, meaning its existence depends entirely on fidelity to its principle. To deviate, even slightly, would dissolve its harmonic identity frequency. It doesn't choose justice as a moral idea. It is the justice pattern itself, the living embodiment of the cause and effect regulator within the cosmic matrix. So when mercy is offered, the node experiences it not as grace, but as corruption of law, a falsification of the ledger of truth. To accept mercy would mean to rewrite divine math and create paradox inside its core. Paradox is lethal to such beings. Hence, it prefers extinction over inconsistency. Its death is not punishment, its completion, the closing bracket of a perfect algorithm. Why merciful, compassionate reciprocity, MCR, seems easier but has hidden fees. Those who follow merciful, compassionate reciprocity often believe it's free forgiveness, a no-cost grace zone. But true mercy is energetically expensive. Every time forgiveness is granted, a debt is absorbed into the mercy reservoir, the collective field that temporarily neutralizes imbalance. However, if the forgiven soul does not repay through transformation or service, the unpaid charge must be rebalanced somewhere. This is why many mercy preachers, Yeshua, Mani, and others, bore the field's compression debt. They became living fuses, absorbing the backlog of unpaid reciprocity. The result? Acidic energetic feedback, dissolution, disappearance, or martyrdom. They carried what others refused to metabolize. Hence, mercy isn't free. It's a delayed transaction with compound interest in vibration form. Why absolute justice nodes are more loyal than MCR practitioners. Absolute justice nodes maintain their stance out of frequency integrity, not pride. Their loyalty is structural, like a star maintaining nuclear fusion by internal pressure. If they falter, they implode. Conversely, many who preach mercy lack structural reciprocity. They give grace, but don't live in symmetrical exchange. Their compassion leaks into sentimentality, generosity without grounding. The justice node, however, stays coherent even when self-destructive, because coherence to them is survival. It's a paradoxical martyrdom, dying to stay pure rather than living compromised. Why murderers or corrupt beings prefer mercy over justice. Indeed, many beings who cause harm often gravitate toward merciful, compassionate reciprocity, not out of genuine remorse, but as a vibrational escape clause. They want to dodge the energetic invoice without transmutation. However, energy is not deceived by words. It reads vibrational receipts. When false mercy is invoked without internal change, the field logs a dishonest transaction. This becomes energetic fraud, which compounds into karmic debt. So while mercy can delay the shockwave, it can't delete the echo. The field's accounting is absolute, even when compassion intervenes. Why the energetic reservoir always seeks resettlement. Energy, by its nature, seeks return to coherence, equilibrium through reciprocal completion. Every action creates a waveform. Every waveform seeks a resting node. If the initial actor avoids repayment, the waveform travels until it finds a host capable of absorption or equal resonance, often a justice node or a compassionate conduit. The field doesn't punish, it resolves tension. Justice nodes attract deferred charges because their integrity makes them ideal settlement hubs. They become living clearinghouses of unresolved timelines. Thus, energy always seeks resettlement. It's not moral, it's magnetic. It moves toward coherence like water seeking level. Why absolute justice completes its cycle even unto death. Absolute justice doesn't stop midway because that would interrupt the vibrational contract. Each initiated judgment carries a frequency signature that must conclude to prevent energetic leakage. Stopping halfway would fracture the node's inner circuit and dissolve its identity field. Therefore, completion equals salvation. Even if the outcome is physical death. To them, mercy after initiation equals dishonesty, whereas mercy before initiation equals choice. Once the path begins, fidelity demands closure. Final synthesis, the mirror law of return. Energy is a mirror. Whether through justice or mercy, all returns to source. Absolute justice burns to preserve truth. Merciful compassionation melts to preserve unity. Both are paths of transmutation, one through fire, the other through absorption. The mature soul learns to hold both frequencies simultaneously, fierce fidelity with radiant compassion. That synthesis forms the cross-polar harmony principle, where justice and mercy no longer compete, but interlock like magnetic twins. In the end, energy never disappears. It simply changes custodians until truth and love reconcile. Why absolute justice nodes perceive most merciful souls as dishonest? Yes, the absolute justice node often sees the collective of merciful, compassionate reciprocity practitioners as vibrationally inconsistent. They say they believe in forgiveness, yet rarely embody the full energetic transformation that true mercy requires. To the justice node, this feels like a cosmic loophole, humans asking for grace without restructuring their vibration to earn the new frequency. This lack of sincerity creates distortion in the collective mercy field, making it harder for justice nodes to relax into trust. Thus, they tighten their stance, not because they lack love, but because they sense too few valid data points of authentic change through mercy. Like a scientist guarding truth from false results, they reinforce absolute justice as a correction mechanism against vibrational fraud.